I have two questions. The first is, you've said repeatedly they don't actually need. You said New York might not need 30,000. You said it on Sean Hannity's Fox News. You said
why don't you people act? Let me ask you.
You said
why don't you act in a little more positive? It's always trying to get you. And you know what? That's why nobody trusts the media anymore.
My question to you is, how is that going to impact?
Excuse me, you didn't hear me. That's why you used to work for the Times and now you work for somebody else. Look, let me tell you something. Be nice. Don't
Mr.
be
President,
threatening.
my question is...
Don't be threatening. Be nice. Go ahead.
My question is, how is that going to...
This goofball, our president, Donald Trump, who is in the middle of a coronavirus crisis, and he's handling that crisis awesomely, meaning awesomely bad. Incompetence is costing people's lives. Donald Trump has blood on his hands. I've said it more than once. But so does the Democratic Party. So does all of those politicians that didn't do what was necessary to ensure that the public itself will have their needs met. $1,200 and some of that money is not even going to go out until August. Are you fucking kidding me? The needs of the 1% and the oligarchs were absolutely attended to. And we were thrown pennies and crumbs to go about our way. This is going to take months. And look at the death rates in the United States. That number right here is only going up. It's a straight it's a diagonal line. Literally just straight up slanted. That means that this is only going to get worse. Our system is not set up to deal with stuff like this. You must understand, our system is based around cash. Anything that you get, anything that you use, any company that's in existence, their entire point of existence is cash. Whatever they're doing in order to get that cash is the stupid human trick that allows them to get that cash. There's nothing absolute in the sense of value for somebody who thinks in the way that they can organize a certain degree of an idea and put it into process. There's no absolute value to that. There's nothing that the universe looks at and gives that approval as being something better than something else. Your society looks at those people and think it's perfectly okay for somebody who comes up with an idea to get billions of dollars in comparison to the other people in the society. And that's perfectly fine. From the time that you are an infant to the time that you drop dead, you are, having sex with your wife, having sex with your girlfriend, playing with your dog. You might go outside, talk to your neighbor. But in the entirety of that process, as you're going through your day, going through your life, you are buying food, clothing, you're paying rent. You're doing all of these things, for the most part, in the capitalistic system. And it is ingrained in you. Meaning the value system that you end up with, your worldview, is starting off, right off the bat, just from implicit pressure of the society itself, is that this is the way the world works. These things have a certain value. That guy on that particular company has every right in the world to get billions of dollars. And that guy who's getting those billions of dollars has every right not to guarantee sick leave because that is, after all, his company. Missing the point that the employees who are in the company and the people who are buying their products are the things that make that company what it is. The idea in and of itself should not have infinite value. And it is insane that a society would allow people to get that much cash. And think about it in the context of now. Billions of dollars, Amazon and many of these companies didn't pay anything in federal taxes. Meaning that money, instead of going to oligarchs, should have been going into the public, into the things that the public actually needs. And maybe a certain degree of preparedness. Meaning it is not the responsibility of government, or at the very least it shouldn't be, to help 1%ers make a buck, as opposed to dealing with the needs of the society itself that they are supposed to be representing. But that's not the way our country works. Our country works on cash. It doesn't necessarily work on the notion of building something to do exactly what that thing is supposed to do. That's the secondary act. The first act is cash. So no, we don't have ventilators because they couldn't make a buck off of the ventilators. And no, we don't have vaccines because we couldn't make a buck off the vaccines. And no, we don't have the masks and stuff like that because, again, we couldn't make a buck off those things. And the rub, the thing that should burn, is that we will spend $1 trillion on the military. We would have boats and planes. We would be projecting force all across the world. Trump would get out there and threaten Iran, threaten Venezuela. And yet, Russia had to send supplies to the fucking United States. Are you serious? Donald Trump thanks him, but Russia spends like what, $80 billion on their military. The United States spends $700 or $800 billion on the military. And the United States was putting all of that money into that organization, finding wars of aggression in order to fight and threaten and so forth. We had to get help from Russia because we couldn't attend to our own affairs. What the fuck? How does the public not get angry at that? Look, I thank Putin very much for the products and supplies, but by the same token, that makes me enraged at my own government. There is no reason that the richest country on the planet should need help from other countries in dealing with a pandemic. There is no reason that the death toll of this pandemic that is steadily going up should have gotten to where it is. Right now, the United States is number one. Exceptional. 314 deaths, new cases, 7,042 deaths, 10 new deaths, 277,475 cases. Right. It didn't have to be this way. It just didn't. And to compound that, you have this situation where all of these people have lost their jobs. Like, right here, the level of job loss going back to, I forget the levels in the Great Depression, but in 2008, that's the one we always think of when we think of a crash. 665,000, if I'm not mistaken, were the number of employment claims. Right now, the employment claims are up to 10 million. Right? Look at this. This is astonishing. Look at that. That is mind-blowing. That's called your economy hitting the skids. 10 million workers filed jobless claims in 2 weeks. That is capitalism hitting the skids. If you ever wanted to understand this notion of value, meaning your society treats you a particular way when you work at various jobs, the honest part of it is one of the worst aspects of this capitalistic system, and this is this idea of individuality as being the highest form of expression and perfectly okay. Meaning, if this particular individual wants to get $1 billion and have other people not having that cash that can be used for their own ends, then they can do that. And the society will reward him for that. And that would be perfectly okay and accepted. And the person who is not meritorious enough in that case gets the shit end of the stick and ends up working in a shitty job. The catch is, though, that the guy who's working at that shitty job, who thinks that all of this stuff is his fault and everything else, is living within a societal structure that allowed him to get that shitty wage and to allow that particular person to exploit him in that particular way. Meaning, it's not an individualistic system. It's never an individualistic system. We're in a society that has laws and policies, and those laws and policies cut in various ways. And in many cases, it cuts against us. It is a weird phenomena to me that we turn around and we put people in office that doesn't necessarily represent their interests. And we do it over and over and over again. I guess my point is, the point of view that we have is wrapped up, for the most part, in the system. The way we value, the way we measure, and the way we think what's fair versus what's not fair. But step outside of that and look what that results in. I mean, honestly, 90-something% of the workforce at this point is staying at home. And for that 90% of the people where they're like, look, don't go out. Only jobs that are crucial and necessary. You thought those other workers didn't necessarily have value. Many of those workers didn't think they had value just because, again, their mindset is based within a system that they've grown up in and implicitly accepted. What about now? Do you have value now? And the fact is, you had value before. I've said this over and over and over again, and God damn it, I hope at some point somebody would be like, hey, he's right. Billionaires cannot exist without the workers that are building their products or shopping at their stores. And the notion that they did it on their own is fucking ludicrous. They didn't pave those streets. They didn't have those firefighters. They didn't have those cops. They didn't have a military to protect the assets of the rich and everything else. They didn't have anything to ensure that there was going to be clean air and that the public was going to be healthy enough to do that particular job. Or for that matter, even educated in the sense of the public paying in order to get those workers up to a certain level of education in order to do that job that they want. It's never a process where they did it on their own. That's my point. We've accepted this myth that these guys are so meritorious that they have this much cash. In fact of the matter is that cash is intrinsically tethered to the various people in the communities itself, meaning the exploitation that takes place from people like Bezos or people at these other companies like Walmart is being done in a way where they can exploit a workforce and then have that workforce use government services in order to subsidize them being exploited. And then ends up not paying fucking federal taxes after doing something like that. The worker, in these cases, need to have a certain degree of solidarity and stop the race to the bottom. Meaning, not accept that wage. And I understand we get put in these pressure situations where we're forced to do that. And this is not something you can do in an individual way. It's something that the public would have to understand from flesh to bone. You are infinitely valuable to the companies because he can't make a buck if you don't buy his products or shop at his stores. And you want me to tell you, and just to give you case in point, what's happening right now to the economy? Pretend this was a general strike. Pretend this was a general strike. What happens to the economy when everything in the workers stop? It falls apart. Why does it fall apart? Because the valuable aspect in the economy, the thing that's necessary in the economy in order to do anything, are the workers. You need people buying that product and shopping at that store. And if that's true, which it is, how does he get $1 billion over top of the people who are working in his store that maybe make it $30,000 or $40,000? That's fucking ludicrous to me that we allow that as a society. It just is. If this, what we in right now, in this pandemic, and all of these people, all of these jobless claims, all of these job losses, your system is hitting the skids, and its flaws and its defects are being shown for what they are. When you do products entirely for the point of cash, you miss out on things that can't necessarily be skimped on, like, vaccines. For that matter, when you change the economy to a service economy, get all of these jobs, send the manufacturing and everything else to China and Mexico or whatnot, and then you end up in a crisis, and your country that had the capacity to fund military on both sides of the globe in World War II and supply their own military in order for their invasions and whatnot, and other militaries, meaning Russia and the UK, couldn't supply the masks, the ventilators. How far we have fucking fallen. Just levels of incompetence that is breathtaking. And those numbers that you're seeing in regards to job losses will get higher, especially as the virus gets worse and worse in the United States because Donald Trump is incompetent. And he didn't do what he needed to do in the beginning when he had the 3-month lead time to try to blunt this. And now he's saying 200,000 deaths would be acceptable. That's astonishing. But here's the point. Here's the thing. Whether Donald Trump gets elected or not is entirely going to depend on how he handles this, meaning public perception of how Donald Trump is handling this. Donald Trump has the potential to win the presidency right now. He really does. Especially if the front runner in this is going to be Joe Biden. It's all going to depend on how he handles the coronavirus now. Meaning, yeah, he fucked up, but at the end of the process, the public may look at him and say, okay, he got his shit together in the middle and, the world is great. All right, fair enough. So how he is perceived in this particular moment, in this particular crisis, in large way is going to be dependent on how he gets elected. Meaning if Trump fucks this up royally and you have millions of people dying because the policies and whatnot that Trump pushed through, there's no way he can win that race. I mean, they're going to blame him for deaths that are on the heads of, for the most part, the Republicans and his incompetent government. I don't know how you win that race. Now, if you're running against Joe Biden, I would imagine he has chances, even if people perceive Trump's doing bad, but that's a hard way to go. By the same token, if the public perceives that you did okay in this, well, the public may put you back in that office because the thing you're going to be running on is, we did this great, we're bringing back the economy, Joe Biden is not altogether bad mentally, look how I handle this versus how he handled this. In fact, Donald Trump should start attacking Joe Biden right now on his mental faculties in regards to, look how I, Donald Trump, alpha male, is handling this particular issue. And look how Biden, sleepy Joe, who doesn't even look like he knows where he is, look how he's handling this. He can't even get out a coherent statement. That's what Trump should do. People might hiss and moan at that because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We are also in the middle of a presidential campaign. Joe Biden is fucking fair game, and he should be hit in the face over and over and over again, politically, of course. I'm being, hyperbolic in the sense of political, not in real terms. But you know my point. Biden had to be hidden. Like, that's how bad he is at this point. And Trump, whatever you want to think of him, has just taken a strong approach that is going to reap him magnificent rewards. Donald Trump is pushing, at this point, Medicare for all. I shit you not. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support. PayPal, Patron. This is a late night soapbox when real men can't sleep. Real men do the news. So let's do some goddamn news. I was shocked when I saw this. Oh, Dillywad 35537. When real men can't sleep, real men watch Progressive Voice. Is that what real men do? Watch Progressive Voice? I don't think that's what real men do. Real men have better things to do than listen to a child bloviate. But let's get back to the point. Donald Trump comes out, Medicare for all, corona patients. Listen to this.
We've already seen two of the largest.
And just to be clear, Mike Pence is asking a question about all of the people who are uninsured and everything else. Because understand, at this point, the majority of people has their insurance through their jobs. The fact that they have insurance through their jobs and 10 million people have just lost their jobs, and that number is going to keep going up and skyrocketing, what do you do with that? Not just what do you do with that, how do those people get from point A to point B? How do they get their unemployment benefits fast enough? That $1,200 check is not going to do for people who are lost their jobs. And those companies are not necessarily going to be able to just hire those people back. Those companies might not even be in existence after this. So I hope you understand what I mean. It's a pressing issue. If those people had their health care through those jobs, that means there are 10.4 million people that are now potentially out of health care in the middle of a coronavirus. And we've also had people to die because they didn't have insurance regarding trying to get treatment. Trump is asked the question, or Pence is asked the question on uninsured people. Listen to Pence. Pence is dancing around this. Pence has no answer. Trump comes in and puts a knife in Pence and embarrasses the shit out of Pence. But this is funny as hell. But Trump in this is actually right. I give him approval when he does something that's rational.
Insurance companies in the country announced that they're going to be providing full coverage, free of charge for coronavirus treatment. I fully expect, I think as the president does too, that we'll see more of that for people that have insurance. We'll continue to provide flexibility for Medicaid for people that don't have insurance. We'll make sure that Medicare has the flexibility to meet this moment. For seniors, when we remember that seniors with underlying health conditions are the most vulnerable to serious outcomes from the coronavirus, but we'll get through this using the full weight of the federal government and the full strength of the American economy.
John, I think it's a very fair question, though, and it's something we're really going to look at because it doesn't seem fair. If you have it, you have a big advantage, and at a certain income level you do. I think it's one of the greatest answers I've ever heard. Because Mike was able to speak for 5 minutes and not even touch your question.
No.
So I said that's what you call a great professional. But let me just tell you, you really are. It's really a fair question, and it's something we're looking at.
Well, I think, I mean, just in terms of a fair question, I always endeavor to ask fair questions, but this is a huge worry for people in this country who are in that donut hole. They don't have commercial insurance. They don't qualify for Medicaid. Right. What do they do?
Group, and it's a pretty big group. We're looking at it.
I mean, we spent the entire 2000 election talking about the donut hole, and it's still there.
Yeah, we are. I haven't been up there yet, though. You know, the other people have been talking about it.
No, I mean,
and they haven't spoken.
This was 20 years ago we were talking about it.
But they're talking about it. They're talking about it. I know, but they're talking about it in the 2020 election too, and nobody's gotten to it. Nobody's talked about it at all.
Mr. President?
I think we will. Yeah, I think we're going to get to it. I think we're going to get to it. I don't think the other group will get to it. They haven't even spoken about it, and it's a big group of people.
So are you committing that there's
no,
something
I'm not committing,
you're
but it's something we're going to look at.
uninsured?
I can't commit. I have to get approval from it. I have a thing called Congress.
All right, Sagar.
Basically, Donald Trump is saying, look, 30 million people don't have health insurance. That doesn't really seem fair. Now, fair doesn't really apply. I mean, a lot of things in our particular system is fair. You have a lot of people who don't have health insurance under normal circumstances. And yes, I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, but why is it okay for them to not have it now or to not have it before? Meaning they're going to get ill, they're going to get sick at some point. And yet, if they don't necessarily have insurance because they can't necessarily afford insurance, we as a society itself is going to have to pay for it. That person is going to have to go into debt in order to deal with it, as opposed to us as a society, as a collective, coming together and figuring out how do we provide healthcare for the sake of healthcare, not for the sake of profit, entirely looking at it from the best instance of us, if that makes sense. Meaning not having it as a for-profit exercise, but having it about the patients and the medicine and the doctors themselves. Look, I guess my point is I think there's a moral reason for it, but that's not where Trump is. So I'm not even going to go there. It's more so a rational act, if anything else. You have 30 million people without health care. And many of those people can end up sick or ill, and let's say for the most part they get the virus. Will they go to get health care or will they go to get checked if they don't have insurance and they can't necessarily afford the hospital bill? It creates a disincentive for those people to go and get checked. With that disincentive, you're going to have a certain percentage of those people who say, yeah, fuck it, I'm not going to do it, which makes it that much more bad for them in the case of their potential loss of life or their potential giving it to somebody else. You need to create a system where people, if they need to get tested, if they feel that there's something going on, can actually go and get checked. And after they go get checked, to get some level of medical treatment associated with it without having to pay the bill. The moment that you do that, you end up with a Medicare for all of COVID-19 patients. You remove the disincentive of those people going to get checked. And not just remove the disincentive, you allow a flourishing of medicine at this point. Now, there are questions around the program, so don't misunderstand me. It's oftentimes, if a person comes in with something, my wife does medical coding. Let's say they come in with COVID-19, but they also have pneumonia. And maybe in addition to pneumonia, there's some kind of kidney issue. Which part do you treat? And do you put all of that under the COVID-19 case, in which case the government pays for that particular cost? My point is the margins are not necessarily known at this point. But they are pushing through with this idea that, yeah, we're going to pay hospitals. We're going to cover the expenses of all COVID-19 patients. I think that's just the rational act. If you're trying to deal with the virus, if you're trying to get people in the medical facilities, if they need to get into the medical facilities, you create all the incentive in the world to make it as easy as possible for those people to go there. The moment you do that, you get a much better chance of trying to control the numbers and control the number of people that die from what's going on. So personally, I think it's just a rational act. I wish it was just a moral act, in which case we're saying, and no, another rational act. We pay 2 to 4 times more than anywhere else in the world. Why are we doing that? We get less care. Why are we doing that? As a society, let's come together and do something better like Medicare for all. Here's the rub with that one. Medicare for all has gone up in its popularity. That's the other thing. 9 points. Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Meaning, If Trump comes out, and what he should have said right there was Medicare for all COVID patients. Take the term. Because the term in that case actually does fit. Medicare for all COVID patients. We're going to expand Medicare to cover all COVID patients. He keeps saying it. Why would you keep saying it? Because it's fucking popular. And if Trump is able to stick that, meaning people look at that and is like, wow, I mean, you know, the president is on that. I mean, that's a great policy. The president is doing great with the Medicare for all stuff. Medicare for all and the way people feel about Medicare for all at that point gets entangled with what Trump is doing in this particular policy. Meaning he has outflanked the Democratic Party depending on how Trump runs with this particular case. He should go out and he should attack Joe Biden and he should scream, I am pushing Medicare for all COVID patients. Now, people may ask questions like, well, wait a minute. Why is it okay for people to, you know, get checked out with healthcare because they have COVID, but not cancer? So we can ignore the cancer, but absolutely get the COVID. Like, those questions will come up and Trump is going to dance or say whatever he has to say about it. But if you're trying to get reelected and you're trying to pull back this thing of the number of fuck-ups, one of the ways to do that would be Medicare for all COVID patients. And this seems to be what Trump is aiming for. He needs to say it, not just say it. He needs to go after Joe Biden. And he needs to take every opportunity to show how weak and ineffective, feckless, incoherent, delirious, low energy Joe Biden has been acting in this. Like, his behavior has been utterly atrocious. Out of it, not altogether there. I mean, the people on the CNN and MSNBC had the Biden protection squad, so they don't necessarily ask him anything really hard, and even the softball questions he can't necessarily answer in a coherent manner. Yeah, you should hit him. You're in a presidential primary. He is prime target to be hit. Look at Sleepy Joe. Joe Biden can barely get through an interview. Look how incoherent Joe Biden is. Joe Biden can't even on and on and on. Derisive. Why not? It's the policy, right? It's Trump. He should be doing it right now. Even in the middle of this crisis, he should be doing it right now. Now, don't get me wrong. You have to put it a particular way because you don't want people to be too brash. But I suppose that the way you cut it in order to make the argument is we're in the middle of a crisis, and look how Joe Biden is reacting to this crisis. He's barely around. He's giving these incoherent interviews. I'm the guy who's the commander-in-chief that's doing something in this particular process. Joe Biden is entirely out of it. Who do you want? Yeah, you can make that case. And then when you finish making that case, say the Democrats talk a big game about health care, and I know they want the Obama markets open, but no, I'm going to pass Medicare for all COVID patients. That's what I'm going to do. So anybody who has COVID, anybody who has some illness and everything else related to it can go and get checked and get their treatments. He's outflanked the Democratic Party. Trump coming out with this, Joe Biden is, again, like fucking insane. Joe Biden is not on board. Now think about what that means. And this is why I say the Medicare for all COVID patients is a powerful rhetorical hit. Medicare for all is extremely popular. Joe Biden is fundamentally, entirely, without question, against Medicare for all. If Trump is running a race saying, I am for Medicare for all COVID patients, well, he's attaching himself to the Medicare for all stuff, while Joe Biden, for the most part, is distancing himself from the Medicare for all stuff. And truth of the matter is, Medicare for all was popular in all of the states, even states where Sanders lost by like 30 points. The notion that you will push like a policy position that the Democratic Party is like 80% agree with, and then you get 50, 60% in the public that agree with it, and they still back away from it. It's astonishing to me that that takes place. Joe Biden, when pressed, says this.
System in a way that in fact can respond more rapidly and more effectively to these kinds of crises, because it's going to come again.
I do have one final question for you, because as you've been seeing, our healthcare system seems to be crumbling underneath this crisis. There is not enough. There's not enough support for the healthcare system. There's not enough support for the American people inside of the healthcare system. Are you now reconsidering your position when it comes to single-payer healthcare?
Single payer will not solve that at all. The thing that is needed is, for example, we have a whole number of hospitals that are...
Basically, no. Basically, no. No, I'm not for single payer. Single payer wouldn't do anything. Fact of the matter is, single payer, if you had Medicare for all, that guy who died wouldn't have died because he could have just went to get health care. Maybe the supplies that you needed might have been stocked up, since the healthcare system wouldn't be for profit. It would be to ensure that, you guys are made whole. I suspect there will be governmental predators that will prey on the system after it was created, kind of like the NHS. But still, the basis of the system itself is fundamentally different in the way that we run our healthcare. A Medicare for All system is not running it for profit. In fact, it's running it for efficiency. Meaning, it's very possible that those ventilators would have been available because the person who's running the Medicare for All team might have known that we had a deficiency and applied that, because again, the goal wasn't necessarily profit. The goal was to ensure that the task was done correctly. Joe Biden is to the right of Trump on this. He is so stuck in his ways on this. I don't think he realizes he's being outflanked by Donald Trump. If Donald Trump takes the Medicare for All coronavirus patients, yes, the coronavirus patients thing gets a little dicey in regards to how they cut that. Meaning, it's the Republican Party. They could try to cut it where, the person has to have only corona. Meaning you can only treat the breathing issue, the lung issue, or the kidney issue. No, I can't touch that. So we need to see the details of the plan. But they are talking about doing this for real. Let's see. I'm looking for... All right, right here. And I'll end it on this. President Donald Trump appeared to suggest on Wednesday that he would consider opening Medicare and Medicaid to more uninsured Americans as the coronavirus spreads across the United States. Trump has long slammed Democratic proposals to expand government insurance as quote-unquote socialism, and he decided this week not to temporarily reopen the Obamacare marketplace to allow Americans nearly 30 million uninsured to purchase coverage during the pandemic. It's something we're really going to have to look at because it doesn't seem fair, Trump said Wednesday, White House briefing. If you have it, you have a big advantage, and at certain income levels, you do. The exchanges are still open to people who recently lost their jobs, including the millions of Americans who've recently become unemployed as a result of the pandemic. Now, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's still questions around this in regards to what's going to be in and what's going to be out. But if Trump knocks this out of the park in regards to the Medicare for all coronavirus stuff, like it's easy to go to the hospital, it's easy to get treated and so forth. Basically, Trump is reimbursing the hospitals, meaning when people get sick, they just go and Trump pays for, or the government pays for the treatment. I'm trying to find exactly. All right. Right here. All right. The Trump administration announced Friday that the doctors and hospitals can use federal aid to cover the costs of treating uninsured people who are suffering from COVID-19. The federal payments are part of a $100 billion aid package to healthcare providers will especially serve COVID-19 care. But some health policy experts say the program will be difficult to administer because it's sometimes impossible to separate the costs of treating COVID from the cost of treating patients' other health problems like kidney failure. Millions of people who lost their jobs over the prospect of losing health insurance. Democrats have called on Trump administration to open a special enrollment period for those people to sign up to health coverage under Obamacare. Instead, Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar and health care providers will be reimbursed for COVID-19 care at Medicare rates, effectively a Medicare for all COVID patients. And they will be forbidden from billing patients for services directly on top of that. Sabrina Corlett, co-director of the Center for American Health Insurance Reforms at Georgetown University, said the new plan raises a host of unanswered questions because it won't always be clear whether individual problems, whether pneumonia or kidney failure, are caused by the coronavirus. Now, that's fair, right? We don't know the details of this particular plan. It's Republicans coming up with this particular plan, and they have a habit, just like Democrats, of means testing the stuff, as opposed to just saying, yeah, if you have COVID ID, come on in, get tested, get checked. If you have something else that's also wrong with you, in addition to the COVID ID, fuck it, we'll handle that too. Meaning, don't fuck around. We're trying to piecemeal it. allow people to go and get checked, allow people to go get their, physicals and they get ensure that they get the care that they need and everything else. Many of those people may have secondary issues, and those secondary issues may be just as important as the coronavirus and may actually need to be treated in order for the person to heal from the coronavirus. I hope you understand what I mean. The program has to be somewhat wide open in regards to what it allows, especially if the person has the coronavirus. If he has some other issue associated with it, you should treat both, and you should consider both just part of one. That's my point. If Trump does that, you'll go far better and be far less complicated than trying to piecemeal and say, okay, this guy had that disease where your penis extends and it doesn't go down. That guy had that. And then he also had the coronavirus. And it's like, yeah, well, we treated him for the penis thing, but did the penis thing have anything to do with the coronavirus thing? And they're going to call that guy in and they're going to ask him, hey, how long did the penis thing start before the coronavirus hit? Why are you doing that? Just make sure that it gets treated and just pay the hospital. You gave $4.5 trillion to the oligarchs. I don't want to hear this, penny pinching and dealing with the American public who, at this point, really needs help on a larger level. This does raise questions, though, about why is it that it's okay for somebody to die of cancer, it's okay for somebody to die from not getting their insulin, but the coronavirus hits and it's like, oh my God, we got to get healthcare to all of these people. I understand that the loss of life and everything else is a big deal, so don't misunderstand me. But if it's a big deal now, why is it not a big deal for this particular individual that has cancer or that particular individual that has some other illness? We can do better. Nothing in our healthcare system, for the most part, is given to us by God or anything else. We, as a society, choose what we want to do with it. It takes collective will, don't misunderstand me, and it does take this mass of support pushing against the political system in order to get it done. But a system that works healthcare for the sake of healthcare, as opposed to healthcare for the sake of profit, those are two fundamentally different ideas, and they end up with two fundamentally different outcomes. And where we are now in regards to this virus spreading and us now having the protective equipment, the vaccines, the medicines, the test kits, the ventilators, us not having those things is directly related to our particular system and the way that we operate in this system. It's a goddamn shame. I'm going to end this here because it went way long. Like, share, subscribe. Peter version 1. Wow. And when Democrats lose next election, Russia. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, look, if Trump fucks this up, Trump would lose the election. That's my prediction. If Trump goes through with the Medicare for the coronavirus stuff, and he gets credit for it, meaning you have all of these people that went to the hospital, and let's say many of these people had other ailments that they can get treated while they're at the hospital with the coronavirus stuff. And they look at Trump and say, fucking A, man, he actually allowed me to get the health care that I needed. And maybe create a relationship with a doctor. And maybe afterwards even go further and say, all right, look, we're going to have some sort of expansion of Medicare anyway. Like, it's hard to know where this turns up because it's very possible that it doesn't necessarily just flip overnight in regards to us, in regards to the virus ending. Meaning, you may have a situation where people need long-term care because of the virus itself. And if that's the case, again, that will also have to be covered. If there's any other ailment, any other illness, anything else that's affecting the person, the president shouldn't care. The person has COVID ID, we're going to get him checked. If he has something else, we don't care. If you allow the program to run in that way, where people have getting no stress, are able to get their treatment, are able to go in and get their talks and everything else, it's not being pushed back, they're not trying to means test them and everything else, just an honest process of going to get yourself checked. If that's the case, then yeah, I think Trump wins. Because I think ultimately you have to pass the legislation again. Right now, the Republicans have, for the most part, been running the table. At least from my public perception, they're the ones that came up with the bill in the Senate that gave the $1,200, $4.5 trillion into corporate giveaways. One of those companies, one of the airlines ends up firing workers and laying off workers after taking billions of dollars. So, there's that. Look, I guess my basic point is our system is massively fucked up and it needs to change. And this is somewhat of an ideological change in the way that people see themselves in the context of the larger system. And if you can't see it, it becomes hard to argue with it. Like I try to point out, to varying levels of success, that there is no point to any of this. Like, it's one thing to have a society where you deal with the issue of work, because work is the pain in the ass issue. If you want anything done, somebody has to do it. Or you need to come up with processes that can do it to lessen the workload. We don't do that. Like, when we're building stuff, we're not building stuff for the sake of the thing itself. Like, you needed a house, so you built a house to live in. Well, that's a very specific thing that you need in order to keep you from the ailments. You need something to transport, a car, a boat, whatever. Again, that's something that you need in order to get from point A to point B. But our system prioritizes not the thing, it prioritizes the profit. The thing's always secondary. And when the thing is always secondary and the only thing prioritizes is profit, there are a lot of things that are not necessarily profitable, but are what I would consider moral acts. Meaning, there is no capitalistic cash gain off of dealing with homelessness. So no one touches it. There's no gain in producing low-cost ventilators. So they just don't do it. But maybe you need those low-cost ventilators because those low-cost ventilators are less expensive, does the same job, and would be able to be proliferated all throughout the United States just in case we have a crisis. But again, our system is not for that. Our system is, how much can I make off of it? And in the case of ventilators, masks, and all this other stuff, couldn't make any bucks off of it, so screw it. And then we have this incompetent president. Yeah, I think he could win again. Have you seen Joe Biden? I mean, honestly, have you seen Joe Biden? And if Trump starts screaming about Medicare for all coronavirus patients, oh my God. If the public starts to perceive that Trump didn't fuck up on this, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, of course. I mean, this is prognostication. But I honestly do believe it hinges on how this crisis is handled. And Joe Biden, look, they've done their best to try to hide Joe Biden, but Joe Biden has some significant cognitive issues that he has to deal with. He's going to be on the debate stage with Trump. They're going to be sniping at one another in the press and everything else. And like I said, if my name is Donald Trump, or if I'm standing beside Trump, what I am telling him is hit him relentlessly every time you get on the mic. Talk about how you're handling this versus him. Say it over and over again. You don't have to say anything about his cognitive glitches. You can call him slow and everything else, but saying he has been underwhelming in dealing with this issue. Put a spotlight on how Joe Biden has behaved. Even create a hit video showing Joe Biden in the various interviews that he was doing up until that point. That's what you should do. If it was me, and if I was advising Trump, that's how you go after your opponent. Now, some people would say, oh, boo, boo, you're in the middle of a crisis and a pandemic. People don't want people to be vicious and go after their opponents. Yes and no. His base would be perfectly okay with it. Also, with that argument, the other counter argument to that is we are in a crisis. Goddamn right we're in a crisis. And we don't have time for this particular guy who's not up to the task to do the job. You go after this in somewhat of an aggressive way, but your argument and the basis of your argument, which, yeah, is somewhat disingenuous, is that we are in the middle of a crisis and he is not up to the task of dealing with this crisis. That's why I am going after him. We're in a we're in a primary race after all, or a presidential race after all. So yeah, I'm going after him because I don't think he's up to the task. I'm the one who's going to get us through this. This is the guy that's going to, can't do the job. Look how he's handled his interview questions. Look at these videos of Joe Biden online. Like, that is brutal. Now, in the Democratic Party, they didn't want to talk about that stuff. And this is kind of the point of primaries, right? You push that stuff in primaries because you want to see whether or not the person can take a hit. If the person has a glass jaw, then you don't want that guy running out there. The catch here is the Democratic Party didn't care. Their main priority was stopping Sanders. Beating Trump was always secondary to this process. So Joe Biden, yes, he was the one with the black coalition, and because he had a black coalition, that was the one that had the best chance of effectively derailing Sanders. If Joe Biden didn't run, Sanders probably would have taken this race. I honestly think that. And I will go even further and say if Sanders actually fought in this race, Sanders could have won this race. Despite all of the opposition that Sanders was up against, Sanders could have won this race. If I was his advisor, he would have won this race. That's not true, because he would have ignored me. And that was the problem with Sanders. There was good advice in regards to going after Biden. Nina Turner led the way with Joe Biden betrayed the black community. Harsh, brutal, but we were in a political campaign. And Nina should have went further and pointed out that Joe Biden is lying about his civil rights record. Now, the reason that you do that, and this is a tangent, but at least in my head, playing politics, the reason that you do that and you attack that very specific point of Joe Biden is lying about being part of the civil rights movement, Joe Biden is lying about being part of the civil rights movement, right off the bat, especially if you can show the videos, it shows that this person is willing to say whatever the fuck he needs to say, whether or not it's true, doesn't matter at all. And it gets across all of these people, all of these African Americans who still have a love for Obama, saw Joe Biden standing there with Obama. Joe Biden has been there for years, and Joe Biden is the exact hack that the Democratic Party has been propping up as being the normal politician for the last 40, 50 years. John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, Joe Biden, they're all the same people. Joe Biden's enthusiasm rate is 24%. It's the lowest of a Democrat in 20 years. All of those people with numbers that low lost. Joe Biden, in this very particular case, if exposed in that way, loses a share of the black vote. What I mean by that is Bernie Sanders, in prepping for going after this, needed to have a ruthless determination in order to win. And that ruthless determination should have been powered by the ends. Meaning, yes, the ends in this case justify the means. If I need to put a knife in each and every one of those candidates in order to win this race, I'm going to do it because we have existential threats. We have a pandemic right now that people are dying from. We need Medicare for all to deal with this particular issue. We have climate change that is going to destroy our way of life. We have people who are living on the street. We have people who don't have health care. Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Las Vegas, opened up an open air area for people to lay out in the streets that were homeless. That's a crisis also. Why are we okay with people laying on the streets? I don't understand why we're okay with that. I guess my point in this is you put a knife and you do what's necessary politically to tear down your opponents in the way you need to tear down your opponents in order to win. Each opponent may be different in the way that you attack them. Elizabeth Warren is a little harder to attack, and maybe you don't attack her at all. But Joe Biden is ample, easy, straightforward to attack. The moment that Joe Biden goes into those black churches and say he's part of the civil rights movement, and then you show the video immediately after with Joe Biden being not part of that movement, that hurts, that bites, because it makes it look like he's a grifter who's latching on to something that is sacred in a way, but he has no connection to it, but he's pretending to. Bernie Sanders walked with Martin Luther King. And if anybody asks Sanders about that video, he could say, look, I walked with King. I was part of that particular movement. Joe Biden wasn't, and he shouldn't be out here saying that. That's how you handle that. You making an affirmative argument about why you're better than Biden and the things that you want to accomplish. That's great. And that's going to get a lot of youth and a lot of other people who say, yes, that's what I want. Finally, somebody is articulating the things that I believe in. However, you have a lot of people who don't think that way and who look at Joe Biden and say, that's our guy. That's the normal politician. That's the guy who can beat Trump. That's the guy we can sell to the white population. We just need to get Trump out of office. That's the guy that we think can do it. The problem with this is he's not the guy that can do it. And in the context of this particular election, you should have put a knife in him. Like, you should remind people that, look, Joe Biden has difficulties in articulating his words and everything else. You should attack that. You should make that point clear. Like, look, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't have time to be, gentle with my feelings in this. Look how Joe Biden's handling this. Look how I'm handling this, and proceed from there. Yes, my tactics in this are somewhat aggressive, and yeah, I do want those to bite, but that's the politics. If you can't win with your affirmative argument, which you couldn't, meaning the black vote didn't go to you despite the fact that your policies would have been far better for that populace, they went to Biden. Not to mention, despite agreeing with you on your policies. It's just fucking amazing. Which means that your ability to get those people is not in an affirmative argument. Your ability to get those people is to shave them off of Joe Biden, even if they went to other people in the race. So what? But shave them off Biden and raise yourself up in the exact same process, showing that you were part of the movement. That should have been one of your key attack plans for Joe Biden. The thing here is you're looking for something that will piss people off about Biden and shave off votes in that particular demographic. I suspect that demographic would have went to Sanders after that. No, yes, you continue to make your affirmative argument, but yes, you also play hard politics in order to get from point A to point B. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. Nina Turner started it off. Sanders backed away from it. Let's see. We have people here. Dillial 357. Medicare for all will be filled the hole of accessibility. Yes, that's true. These would be more facilities and personnel funding would not be a question. Yeah, yes, that's true. Meaning you're not getting a bill when you go in to get checked, or you're not getting a bill when you have some kind of health issue or whatever else. We pay that stuff in our taxes, meaning the bill itself is lesser. So think of it as if you had healthcare. Let's say your healthcare is basically a tax. It's tax you can't get rid of. Everybody needs healthcare. At some point, everybody needs some level of coverage. You don't want to get hit with this ridiculous bill. If you look at it as a tax, you could also ask the question of, well, is there a way where we can lessen the cost of that particular tax? Especially since our outcomes are worse than many of the other countries, and not just worse than many of the other countries, more expensive. Meaning we're not getting the bang for our buck. How can we change that? And as a society, come together and say, all right, we need to get rid of these health insurance companies. And we need to have a single payer system that allows us to effectively make healthcare about healthcare. That argument has won, with the exception that nobody picks it up. So, it's like, I don't know. My feelings for Sanders are complicated. I accept that Sanders has done amazing things in getting the conversation moved, this kind of hegemonic shift in our thinking. By the same token, didn't have the ruthless determination to do and to shape the world in the way that he wanted. Joe Biden being his buddy was more important than Medicare for all, the existential threat of climate change, the fact that 500,000 people go bankrupt a year because they don't have health insurance, the fact that Joe Biden's plan is going to kill hundreds of thousands of people under his own healthcare plan. I hope you get my point. Those things are big, massive issues that are extremely and extraordinarily important and demand a certain level of ruthlessness in pursuing your objectives and getting your policies done. Even if that means you need to eat through every last person in the Democratic Party. What I want is a candidate to fanatic devotion to policies and getting those policies accomplished, like Bill Compton loves Sookie on True Blood. That's what I want. Bill Compton, if he was in a bar and somebody was threatening Sookie, he would kill 60 people in that bar to make sure Sookie was safe. I looked at that and says, wow, that is love. Just other shit wasn't love. And I realized I was like, no, that's not really love. I mean, that's something else. That goes beyond love. Love is a little different than that. It doesn't have you killing 60 people in order to get to your boo. But my point is the level of devotion to her that he was willing to effectively cut through 60 people in order to get his objective accomplished. That's how I want my particular person, my warrior. That's what I want them to be. An ideological, fanatic devotion with this notion that what I am doing is God's work. And I'm going to make life better for a large swath of the population. Not in a bullshit way where Republicans make that shit up. Not in a bullshit way where Democrats make that shit up. No, in a real terms, we're going to push the society to the left. That's my job. That's what I'm going to do. Like, that's what I'm looking for. All right, so Gary Kurtz, full Medicare for all will happen, math finder under this scenario. Let me say that one more time. Full Medicare for all would happen much faster. Oh, I see. Well, I was thinking that too. Like, how does this evolve? If Trump is pushing through a Medicare for all coronavirus bill, does that evolve? Does that stay where it is? Or does that kind of lead in to just expanding it to the rest of the population? So yeah, I agree with you. This is one of those slippery slope ones. Let's say Peter version 1, any thoughts on Joe Biden's sexual assault? Yes. And how are they protecting them? Also, saw the view when Bernie won, second was the winner to them. Second was a winner of them. Let me say that one more time, Peter, version 1. Any thoughts on Joe Biden's sexual assault? Yeah, I've done videos on Joe Biden's sexual assault. It's amazing that they're hiding that. I did a video yesterday, Alyssa Milano, a Joe Biden fan. She's, who, was at the Christine Ford's thing, saying, I believe women, holding up the sign and trying to get Brett Kavanaugh kicked off the bench. And then this comes up, and she's mum. She put out this long Twitter thread and didn't mention Joe Biden rape at all. So the woman who said believe women only wants to believe those women if they were raped by a Republican. How sad. The news media and everything else have covered it up. They've tried not to bring it up. They don't talk about it. They don't touch it. It comes out in print media, but in mainstream media, they don't touch it. They are protecting Joe Biden over something of a rape allegation, credible rape allegation. Yeah, it's fucked up. Megan Morales, JT, would you say, given everything that's happening, that enough workers may finally be understanding? Also, news that the oceans can be repaired in a generation. Now, see, I don't know about the oceans thing. I'm not knowledgeable of that one. But are people waking up? God damn it, I hope so. Honestly, but I don't know. I don't know what that breaking point is for the American public. People cling to a system. I mean, think of something that you've had in your life that was somewhat problematic, but you attended to it, you wanted to keep it, you didn't necessarily want to throw it away, and you attend to it over and over again, even if that thing looks like it's falling apart. That's kind of how we are with our system. We try to keep at it. All right, relatively safe, the air is relatively clean, I can get a job, etc., etc. And they want to keep that going because chaos is not necessarily preferable, and they don't necessarily know or can come to an agreement because they don't have any kind of connections. They're all individuals on what would be better, what would be more ideal, what would be to the benefit of the entirety of society. How do we build a society with incentives that create positive outcomes? That's the big one, as opposed to the one that creates the shit that we have here. I hope so. I don't know, but I hope so. I would love. I mean, if nothing else is clear at this point, your government doesn't give a shit about you. Like, understand what I'm saying here, and I'm being honest. They put a 5 point. The job losses have gone to 10.4 million. Those people are going to lose their health insurance. Those people are going to lose their ability to pay their bills. You have a lot of people who are furloughed, who are still working with companies, but again, not going to be able to pay their bills because they don't necessarily have guaranteed sick leave. Or in that case, even if they do have sick leave, it's still 2 weeks, which is not necessarily enough time for the virus to run its course. I guess I'm making the point that the public at some point has realized that the government, who is supposed to be philosophically bound to our interests, does not give a shit about us. Think back to Obama, 2008. You had the housing crisis. Obama, what does he do? He protects Wall Street and lets the homeowners go bust. All of those people that lost their houses, because at that point, Obama didn't necessarily care about it. It was just put up as a program. But his attention was given to the top 1%. The tax cut, effectively getting rid of giving 80% of Bush's tax cuts. Like, these things are directly related to a particular class, not us. They could have given that money to the homeowners to pay off their bills that were paid off the banks. They could have did it that way. They didn't do it that way. They gave it immediately to the banks with no restraints. I guess the point I'm making here is your government works in a particular fashion for a particular class. And you can see it in everything that they say and everything that they do, and it should be infuriating to you. They have effectively captured the government, corporate capture of government, even to the point that in a crisis, they will give a corporate rape of our population. That $4.5 trillion, that money should have went to the individuals in our system. We should have been giving people $2,000 a month for as long as this lasts. Tell those people to hunker down in the house, get rid of rents, get rid of bills, expenses, all that stuff. And yeah, pass Medicare for all to allow those people to get the health care that they need. Even if you want to say Medicare for all people with corona, fair enough. Leave it open in regards to not means testing it or anything else, so fair enough. I guess I'm making the point there are policy positions that you can take. There are things that you can do to make this better. And we don't do those things because the workers and the people in the society are not the priority. Those aren't the people who are giving the campaign checks. Those aren't the people who they're going to get a job with after. Those are not the people who are influential and can make their lives miserable when they're running ads against them or giving them money to, run their own ads. They attend to the wealth of the nation. That is onerous. You have 99% of the population. A large part of that population is not working. You have rent that's due. You have food expenses. You have all of these things that you would have to pay for over the course of a month. And what the president does in that case is not deal with that particular issue, not dealing with the issue of masks and ventilators and all this other stuff, utter incompetence. The Defense Production Act should have been invoked a long time ago in order to get companies to fulfill the obligations of masks, ventilators, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't do that. This is what I mean when I say incompetence. And this is why I say Trump has blood on his hands. But whether Trump has blood on his hands or not may not matter if he's able to shape some narrative that he has done a good job on this, and that, this is, my works, my good job. I did a great job on this. And the public looks at it and says, okay, well, fair enough. He did the best that he could. It's not all that bad. The Medicare for all, who like it, is great. He's able to go to the left a little bit when times are needed. This is going to play for him. That's my only concern. Again, the catch becomes, though, what happens in the way that he handles the coronavirus case. If he handles it well, I don't see why Trump can't win. And again, he should be hitting Joe Biden over and over and over again in the way that he's been handling this particular crisis. I mean, why wouldn't you hit Joe Biden? You need to put the public attention on him now in order to create the narrative. Meaning you need to put a circle around Joe Biden and point. And when you do that, especially when you're going to be on media is going to talk about it. They're going to be on CNN, MSNBC. They're like, oh my God, Donald Trump said this about blah, 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 blah. Is it right for Donald Trump to say this about blah, 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 blah? But the public is still hearing what Donald Trump said about Joe Biden, and they have their own eyes, their own perceptions, and they can come to their own conclusions about whether Donald Trump is right. This is kind of my point when I say he should be hitting Joe Biden. The bully pulpit is his strength. I mean, that's kind of the perk of the presidency, right? I would be giving those press conferences, and I would be going after Biden. I would be totally. And again, going after him very specifically on the handling of this virus. Meaning, look at him and the way that he's been incoherently trying to relay information about this, and look at me and what I've been doing in this office as president. That's the way I would look at the attacks on us. But that's just me. I'm an asshole on this stuff. I look at this stuff in the sense of gamesmanship, where my objective is to effectively stop you, or my objective is to get my policy things through. And if the goal of it is to win, you use whatever's at your disposal to win, especially if what you're trying to win for is that important. I would argue that trying to win the presidency, especially with a lefty, after not being in the political space for like 40, 50 years, that should be in and of itself enough oomph to get you over the hurdle of your own personal biases. Unfortunately, Sanders can do that. Fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. What is that? M. Phillips. Okay, M. Phillips. Do we have time to prepare for the 24th Bell riots? 24 Bell riots. Speaking of riots, general strikes. The thing is, the public would need to have a sense of togetherness. Meaning it can't just be one or two individuals. It has to be a mass movement of sorts where all of these people come together with this kind of notion of consciousness of class. This notion that we are all in this together. And because we're all in this together, let's not have a race to the bottom in regards to our wages and everything else. Meaning, and what I mean by race to the bottom? If you are poor and broke, you have a kid, you have expenses, you need a job, you go to, Burger King, McDonald's, and they say, all right, we'll pay you, $8 an hour. Now, you could turn that down, but by the same token, you need a job, you need to do something, you might have a kid. Again, you have all of these other expenses, you don't necessarily have any skills per se, so you're kind of stuck with what you get, and you may take that job. As you take that job, though, the wage that you get in that job may be insufficient for you to get from point A to point B. Now, right now, in the time that we're in, the value of those people become extremely well known. And the society itself, because again, all of us are under the same umbrella of this notion of working for somebody or working a task for somebody. We're all part of this particular capitalistic system. We should, in solidarity, look at the system and accept provisions of minimal provisions across the board, meaning a certain amount of wage that the employer can't necessarily go below. And I know it's like $7 or whatever. That number should be much higher, not just a certain number of wage. I guess my point is getting rid of the competition in regards to how, getting rid of the competition aspect of employer versus employer, not employer versus employee, employee versus employee. I hope that makes sense. Like when I'm trying to get a job or you're trying to get a job, you might accept that job for $8. I might accept that job for $9, but we're in competition of sorts in regards to who's going to get it. And the person who may lower themselves in regards to the number may actually get it because the employer just wants to make as much profit as possible. We are effectively against ourselves on this. My point is that working in a certain degree of solidarity, coming together and recognizing that all of us are one, this 99, 98, 95%, whatever you want to call it, and take action accordingly. I don't know how you organize that. That's a large number of people to educate and to get in this mindset of their own strength. You're at somewhat of an inflection point. You have all of these businesses that are effectively crashing. You have all of these industries that are out begging for money. If you had a lefty government, if you had a government that was somewhat rational, that was looking out for the American public, that government would get concessions for those dollars. And that concessions would be a reorganization of their particular management system, meaning the employees themselves get more agency in the company. If you want the cash comes with strings attached. Now, they could let their company go bust, but again, they're just there to make profits. My point is, we can have a renegotiation in regards to what is fair in the classes. And all of us, in solidarity, should be working together for our own ends. Whatever the other diversity, political differences, and identity and whatever else, that stuff is less important. Meaning you can still bitch about it, you can still have those arguments, you can still point fingers at one is this or one is that, whatever. I don't particularly care about that. I care about the material needs of the people in the country itself. And a class-based argument where all of these people on the general terms look at what is the minimum we are willing to accept and function as one block from there. That would be emancipatory. Because the workers themselves are the people that make this society go. Any product that you get, anything that you use, any service that you get, there's a person somewhere that had something to do with you getting your hands on it. We can do better, though. We can do better. All right, I think that's everything. Let's see. Oh, Senator Sanders deleted tweets about Kay to hide Joe. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. In our show today, we're talking about buyer's remorse over Joe Biden. I mean, Joe, for fuck's sake, man, he can barely articulate anything. Do they honestly believe that Trump won't call him a rapist? Trump is going to have Tara Reid sitting in the front row of the first debate. Watch. I shit you not. Watch. I would not put it past him. Peter version 1, Sanders won, second place won, hypocrisy. I see. All right. And last one, Zen Jamerson. Sometimes I feel that Americans deserve what they get because they continue to vote for these politicians and they continuously sell them out. Thoughts? Look, I don't mean to sound. I don't want to sound like I'm above this because I'm not in the same system. But we don't know any better. Like, I know that sounds fucked up and weird, but after the 2020 election, I realized we don't know any better. The public has been deadened in regards to their expectations and imagination of what is possible in politics. I showed the video the other day with John F. Kennedy. We're going to the moon. This expansive speech, this awesome speech. And now you've gotten to the point where the Democratic Party can't even come up with a cohesive argument to go against Trump, who's out there literally killing people and had blood on his hands because of his incompetence. How minor and little they are. And you even got Trump to get the jump on the Democratic Party, the party that's supposed to represent the poor and the middle class, with his new coronavirus Medicare for All plan. We vote for these hacks from the standpoint of the left because the left are cowards. That's just being honest. These guys don't have their policy positions. They ride them at any particular turn. They call them bros. They call them racist. They call them all that stuff. They disrespect them at any particular moment because they know that ultimately they'll still get their vote because they're terrified of Republicans. Meaning you don't have to respect the left. You don't even have to listen to the left because at the end of the day, the issue is stopping the Republican. And so you have people who fall in line and vote for that very specific reason. Well, we got to stop the Republican, blue no matter who. You have other people who would make that vote because they think that this is what a typical politician is. When you look over the last, 40, 50 years, Democrats have been spineless, feckless, and rather weak. At least that's what they've gotten to be currently, which is effectively a pro-corporate class. They like to say a big tent. What they mean is you have oligarchs and you have people who are dirt poor in that tent. And who, for the most part, gets the most attention? I give you a guess. It's the oligarchs. It's the people who are putting the money in that. Meaning you have a party that is somewhat divided in regards to its intentions and its needs, and who is going to carry the day in that. Now, the Sanders fight in 2016 and 2020 is a reflection of that in real terms in this kind of experiential way. But people don't know any better. They are implicitly educated year after year after year, seeing people like Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Hillary Clinton. These are the politicians that they see as leaders of that party year after year. That looks normal to them. And because it looks normal to them, they think to themselves, Joe Biden is the guy. Missing the point that Hillary Clinton lost, Al Gore lost, and John Kerry lost. They look at Sanders and think he's a risk. Yes, I like his policies, I like all that stuff, but I don't know if he can get elected. I think Joe Biden can get elected. This is a normal politician to me. So they're implicitly educated. That deadens their expectations and imaginations and even any notion of accountability in regards to the government itself. And because there's no accountability in this process, because one group is voting because they're terrified, another group is voting because they're part of the corporate class, let's call them liberals, and you have this other group that's voting because, they're wrapped up in a certain idea of the party that this is what you need to do in order to hold back Trump. They have all sorts of reasons for ending up voting for these hacks. And honestly, part of that reason, a lot of it has to do with just how bad the Democratic Party has been, and people consider that to be normal. I think that's where it is. Think of how people learn. As a child, you grow up in a particular society, that stuff soaks into you. You may have an aspect of you that's you, but that's always bumping up against everything else in your culture, society, environment, the time period to which you were dispatched on this earth, your friends, your political system, your world point of view, depending upon what that world is. You might have alien contact, in which case the entire world comes together in regards to dialogue. The internet has made it possible for us to pretty much be everywhere across the world in a moment. Anything that goes on, for the most part, gets put online. So we have a certain level of interconnectedness at this point. But people just learn incrementally. Like, there's not usually these kind of big changes. And because you grow up in this particular society, you learn all of these things as normal. Your point of view gets shaped just based on the political, the economic, your friends' culture, and everything else. What you consider to be normal, what you consider to be fair, is entirely shaped by an economic and political system. Now, at some point, you grow out of that. But most who are not entirely paying attention to politics may hear a soundbite here, a soundbite there, don't necessarily have a full understanding of what's going on, may buy into that. You have other people who buy into candidates because, let's be honest, sometimes they're racist, sometimes they're a bit sexist. Some are angry. In those cases, those people may not vote at all. But for the people who are voting for just random Democratic hacks, I think they fall into just a few categories. Terrified, gotta hold back Trump, blue no matter who in this case, or Joe Biden is the guy who we could sell. That's the guy who's a normal politician. The other guy is somewhat of a radical, so we're going to go with Joe Biden as our safe bet. And they do it year after year. And they would get on their platforms and say, how dare you not vote for the Democrat? How dare you not for the Democrat? Missing the point that year after year after year, the candidates get shittier and shittier and shittier, going further and further to the right. For fuck's sake, it's not a Democratic Party in the traditional sense of FDR. They're basically a right-wing party. Both of those parties are two wings of the exact same bird. We have a one-party system in this country, which is two branches or two wings of that particular party. They're acting as if these parties are dramatically different. They agree almost entirely in the basic general terms of the way we run our system politically and economically, and the way that wealth is distributed because of the way we run that particular system. But people get used to that. And in getting used to that, especially if you're growing up in it, they consider it as normal, especially if you're not necessarily paying attention to it. So yeah, they would go and they would place their vote for Joe Biden and they would think, yeah, Joe. And if you ask them, well, what are you voting for him for? Like, are there policies or anything else? Well, they would probably tell you, especially if they were African American, that's the guy that could be Trump. It's not love. It's just, he's there to beat Trump. I think those people are massively wrong and mistaken. They have the ability to choose their friends. They have the ability to choose the content that they read and watch. And because of that, I think they've settled themselves into somewhat of a false narrative that Biden, with his 24% enthusiasm, is going to somehow beat Trump. I got to be honest, I don't see it. So I don't, the Democratic Party was perfectly willing to use Biden as a weapon and use Elizabeth Warren as a weapon to put a knife in him while Biden finished him off on Super Tuesday. But Sanders was never willing to fight that way. And because of that, this is where we are. We need an autopsy on this race. I swear we do. Zane Jamerson. Sometimes I feel that the Americans deserve... Oh, I read that one. Yeah, I feel you too, Jamerson. I mean, look, to some degree we do, right? We didn't take precautions. $1 trillion for the military. And we have the ability to supply these items. We just chose not to do it. So, it's almost like a karmic wheel of sorts. I think God is kind of in the logical interactions of things. And in this case, the logic of it, it compels itself. That's all I mean. Dillywatt 357, if Corn Pop was still here, we'd have Medicare for all. If Corn Pop was here, Corn Pop would have got us Medicare for all. Yeah, Corn Pop was badass, right? All right, let's see. Last one, because I'm starting to drag ass. And this one is Marcus Will. If that is the case, how do you explain Trump? What do you mean? I don't understand. If that is the case, how do you explain Trump? Well, I think Trump got in because people were angry that the Democratic Party, for the most part, failed them. There was no hope and change in the case of Obama. It was just the press thing. And you have a situation where Obama is running around still trying to push the TPP. Hillary Clinton was one of the most hated politicians in the United States. The country was looking for change. They wanted something fundamentally different. And when you look at the polling afterwards, the people were, they would say, yeah, we don't think he's qualified for the job, but we're sick of the system the way it is. It's been fucking us over. And so you get Trump. Now, the Democratic Party never wanted to do an autopsy in order to understand that particular dynamic. You have a society where people struggle. And those people who are struggling, they're expecting them to go out and vote for a party that didn't alleviate their struggling. In the worst case, meaning in 2008, they did attend to their wealthy donors and their oligarchs. This is kind of the point I'm making here. People should be enraged by this. And in that enragement, I honestly do believe that type of fight leads to Trump, a populist. We had our own populist, but Democrats shot him in the knees. And so the other populists that the public was looking for, that the public was craving, that the public wanted something different, they got him. Trump. They got him. And yet, the Democratic Party can't make a cohesive argument on how they are somehow better than him. He is going up in the polling in regards to his handling of the virus. He's going up in polling in regards to his approval rating. And again, that's in the context of a virus that is ravaging this country because of how behind Donald Trump was in dealing with this crisis. Come on. Come on. There we go. 1,118 cases, 59,226 deaths, 229,000 recovered. The United States has 361 new cases. Total deaths, 7,450, that's 403. New deaths, 11. Total recovered, 12,283. Active cases, 257,836. And you have many states that don't have their ventilators, don't have masks, don't have protective equipment. And if those people speak out, those people can literally be fired. They're being threatened to be fired if they speak out about the inefficiencies in their systems. And yeah, it hasn't hit Trump yet. It hasn't hit Trump yet. And like I said, if you can go after Biden, maybe not overtly aggressively, but definitely point out how he's handling this versus how you're handling it. Let the media talk about it. Let the public make their choice. Show the video of the back and forth of Joe Biden being weak. Let the media run with it. And when they run with it and they're talking about it, even if they're denigrating you, there's a lot of people in this society that will look at that video and be like, oh God, he is horrendous. That should be an attack line. That will be an attack line at some point. It should start now. He has the entire public attention every time he does one of those events. And you can use the bully pulpit to say whatever you want. Yes, you're talking about the coronavirus. Yes, you're talking about things that need to be done. But within the context of that, get a little choked up. This is an emergency. And my opposition over there is out to lunch. And then show a video of Joe Biden being out to lunch. Now, the media is going to shit on you like nobody else when you do something like that. Immediately go to the corona stuff, but make your point of like, look, we're in the middle of a crisis and we need somebody who's a serious person in the Democratic side. And Joe Biden is not that serious person. Look at what he's been doing. Now, the media are going to take a shot at you. Still, make the point. We are in a crisis. We don't have time for this guy. That's my advice to Trump. And do that while you're explaining what you're doing about the coronavirus stuff. Meaning you're going to get eyes on. They may cut that part, but you can use that as a video in and of itself. And the media will be talking about it, asking the question about, is there something wrong with Joe Biden? And why is Joe Biden cognitively slipping? Unless they just bury the story. In the same way they buried the story with Tara Reid. I don't think the media has talked about Tara Reid. They've buried that story. It's astonishing. All right, I'm going to end this. If Trump ran as a blue, could he win? Well, see, that's just it. I mean, I don't know what Trump's political ideology is. I suppose Trump is running as a Democrat. I mean, as a Republican, so he just takes Republican ideology. He might just be told what to say and do. But he had potential, though. Trump, honestly, when he came into that office, could have been one of the most dominant presidents we've ever had. Not necessarily saying good, but dominant. Trump could have got in office and fulfilled his promises. He would have been fucking loved. If he would have came out and was like, we're going to make sure that everybody has health care, we're going to expand, I don't know, that's the public option to remedy this particular part. Something that Republicans hate. He could have said, no, we're not signing the TPP. He did that. He could have dealt with, let me say it this way. He didn't have to stay within the context of party because Donald Trump didn't necessarily have a fledged out political ideology. Meaning he had the opportunity to flip on items to the left and to drag his party to some degree to the left to get something done to look that much more favorable in public spotlight. Many people have a certain perception of Donald Trump because of the way he acts and his demeanor. By the same token, if he is getting stuff done, you can change that conversation to some degree into a certain degree of competence. I don't know. It's just the way I think about the politics of this stuff. Could he win as a Democrat? It depends on what he runs. It depends on his policies. He can't be onerous like that for Democrats. Democrats don't necessarily deal with that. There's a lot of virtue signaling and whatnot. But I don't know if he could run as a Democrat. I mean, but like I said, I don't know his political ideology. I do know, as a Republican, though, he would have that much more leverage to push through something like Medicare for all who want it or whatever, or Medicare for all people with coronavirus. When you are going against your grain, sometimes it's a little bit easier to get stuff accomplished. If I am Bill Clinton and the Republican Party is trying to get rid of Glass-Steagall, if I make an argument as Bill Clinton, who's supposed to be the opposition and on the left, that, yeah, we do need to get rid of Glass-Steagall because of blah, 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 blah. We need to deregulate. That's what we need to do. Well, the moment that you come out with that, to some degree, it inoculates any notion that the idea is being unfair to another part or that is overreach. In my very specific case, I'll leave it there. I don't want to go too far to it. I guess I'm just making the point that, I'm not going that far into it. I don't think he can win as a Democrat. I think the problem would be his manner and demeanor and some of the stuff he said. If he didn't say Mexicans want rapists and drug dealers, I don't think you can say that and run a Democratic primary. The only primary he could run in was the Republican one. But he had chances, man. That's all. He could have went against the grain, and in going against the grain, having a better opportunity to get those things to pass. Sometimes it's hard when there's a narrative against you on something. Tax and spend Democrat, tax and spend Democrat. And you don't necessarily want to fulfill that narrative by doing the thing that they keep saying. Now, sometimes you need to break through that, say, fuck what you are saying about me, and just speak your piece and do your thing. They lose it however they use it. In this particular case, though, I would prefer, wait a minute. In this particular case, though, I don't think Trump would be able to kind of control himself in order to get through that. It had to be a Republican primary. But the thing is, because he came in hated by many of the Republicans, especially the establishment Republicans, he had a certain degree of leeway where he could have pushed the conversation in a different direction with a certain degree of non-vulnerability because he's a Republican making the argument for it. If it was a Democrat making the argument for it, the Republicans would immediately back off the argument. We don't want anything to do with that. We don't want to touch that, et cetera, et cetera. We're playing politics. But when a Republican does something like that and effectively jumps the line from a point of view that they originally held, it makes it a little bit easier for bipartisan cooperation, providing you can get your other Republicans to come on board. At that point, it's the Republican that's coming up with the plan, and it's the Democrat that's saying, yes, let's go along with that, making changes and whatnot. If he's willing to do, yeah, I don't see it. I just can't see Trump running as a Democrat. I can't see him running as a Democrat. But he doesn't need to in order to get stuff done. That's my point. The Medicare for all coronavirus patients, if he actually pushes through with that, that would actually be good policy. Yes, I wish he goes further, but that would actually be a pretty decent policy. But he's also going to cut taxes. But that's kind of my point with Trump. He had the potential to do both, and by doing both, it gives a weird perspective of the president in a way that might have changed the point of view of Trump. I don't know. I thought he had chances. He could do whatever he wanted in that office. Not whatever he wanted. That's not what I mean by that. I just mean Trump came in as a wild card. And because he came in as a wild card, there's certain things that you may want to do to kind of feather your nest for the next election. Some of that may deal with helping public on this or that. Like now in the coronavirus thing, $1,200 is just pennies. Working to get much more supplemental care, meaning if people have to be in for 2 months, help those people in the process of staying in, especially if they can't get to their jobs and everything else. We should be sending aid and money to those people as opposed to all of those corporations. Keep money in their pockets, keep them in their jobs, meaning from the standpoint of helping the government, helping keeping them in their jobs. Do all of those things. But Trump could be complicated as a Republican if he went against the grain to some degree. And him going against the grain actually would have been a way of getting things accomplished, but it also would have looked good to a population that the president is not just a hardcore right-winger. He has the potential to do X or to do Y. That's all. I think if he was trying to win this election lock, stock, and barrel, he would have started doing something like that. I don't think he's done that. All right, I'll end this here. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.